Yo guys, Rever here, back with another video. In this guide, I'm going to be talking about how to solo Princess Mara runs as a druid. Now, the reason why I want to make this video, it's another good alternative to gold farming outside of the Dire Maul E solo jump runs. This is a farm that I've done hundreds and hundreds of times before Dire Maul even came out. I do have the Blade of Eternal Darkness, which is like a 0.1% or 1% drop chance from Princess. So I've had my fair share of runs. In this guide, it's going to be a little bit more in depth. Things that I've done to kind of maximize my efficiency, which in turn will maximize your gold per hour, and other little things of that nature as well. So let's go ahead and get right into the guide. The spec that I'll be using for this farm is my famous 30-0-21 spec that I pretty much use for everything. Picking up all the main damage talents in the balance tree as usual, going all the way down to Moon Fury, 0 into Feral Combat, and down to Nature Swiftness and Resto. This is a slightly different build than what I normally use, mainly because I'm actually currently in the CDL Spring Duel Tournament, but still pick up those main damage talents and getting that survivability from Nature Swiftness. It's very, very important that you get as much damage as possible from your talent tree. I will go and iterate this now, and I'll probably reiterate it later during the Princess fight, but it's very important that you try to pick up as much damage talents as possible. The reason is because she is in this client immune to nature damage. Now I know on private servers you can double dot her with Moonfire and Insect Swarm. On this client you can't. She's immune to nature damage completely. So your main damage is going to be from Moonfire. Starfire, you might be able to get a cast off here and there, which I will go ahead and show you later in the video. But really Moonfire is going to be your bread and butter for the Princess fight. So trying to get as much damage out of Moonfire is going to speed up your runs. One last important note before you actually start the run is you will need the Scepter. It's a question that you have to do. It's fairly long if I remember correctly, but at 60 I'm sure you can speed it up. I got it while I was leveling. So make sure to get the Scepter. It will teleport you to the waterfall. There's plenty of guides out there to tell you how to get it. And once you get to the waterfall, that's where you'll actually start the real run. Okay, so once you have the Scepter and everything ready to go, you're going to go ahead and go down to the part where you open up the portal here. You'll get on this platform. You'll right click the Scepter and you'll just right click it and it'll teleport you right to the spot to start the run. For the sake of the video, I will not be doing this in my normal gear, mainly because a lot of this is pretty hard to obtain, rank 14 gear and TOEP and things of that nature. A lot of you guys may not have access to this, so I really wanted to scale myself down. It is possible to do this in pre-bis, although yes, it will take you longer. You will still be able to do it. So I just grabbed a bunch of random pieces that I had in my bank and some pieces that you could probably buy off the auction house. The gear that I'll be using to kind of scale myself down, just real quick, T2 helm, pretty easy to obtain if you're in a guild. There's not a lot of druids out there. It's pretty easy to get. Choker of Enlightenment, it might be one of the harder necks to get, but you can, be just fine using Star of Mystaria from UD Strat. Really, any stamp intellect neck should work. I will not be using shoulders for this. Sergeant's Cloak, this was like the worst cloak I had in my bank, so I just grabbed it. A lot of this stuff you can buy on the auction house. So Bloodvine Vest you can buy in the AH. Cenarian Braces, I think, also the Cenarian Belt, so both pieces of T1 you can buy. Bloodvine Leggings, Bloodvine Boots. Will not be using hands or one ring. I have Seal the Archmagus. This is probably the worst ring that I had in my bank. It's a lot of people just don't really care for it unless you're like a fresh alt or something. So really just buying something off the auction house that has stamp intellect or some spell power works just fine. Doing a quest like to get Eye of Org works as well. Nifty Stopwatch and Barovs are both from quests. And I have Finkel's, like I said, it's just kind of some random weapon that I had in here with some stamp and intellect, a little bit of spell power, but you can get like the Ogre Maju Staff from Dire Maul. Starting off here at the waterfall, you want to make sure to avoid these Hydras. Should be really easy. As you can tell, I'm still wearing the same gear. To maximize your gold per hour in this run, you really want to get mining and herbalism. You want your mining to be up to about Mithril, even though it can drop true silver. Mithril is where you make most of the gold with Goblin Sappers, with the solid blasting powder, Goblin Mortars, etc., etc. And then herbalism high enough to get Blindweed and Ghost Mushroom. In this area, passing the Hydras, you can get maybe one Mithril node. I don't think I've seen 2 in that area, and then some Blindweed. And then as you get further up into the instance, you can start getting more nodes and of course Ghost Mushrooms. I think Blindweed sells for about 50 to 75 silver per right now, which is pretty high. Ghost Mushrooms sell for about anywhere from a gold 25 to a gold 50. Mithril sells for quite a bit, so I'm not really sure how much it sells for. I stealth right here past the mobs. You can do a non-stealth. It just depends on the pats, but it's just not worth the risk pulling them because most of your mana efficient spells to kill them are nature, and they're immune to nature. So just stealth through, just less risk. Now, as you can tell, I go through the right here, which is not the princess way. We're actually making our way to Gizlock. He's like one of the mini bosses. He's a goblin. He drops a couple of blues that sell for quite a bit of gold, so easy kill. In this area where I drop down, it is possible to get ghost mushrooms, more mithril, so make sure just to have those detect nodes on to farm those. Like I said, I think it's possible to get 1 to 3 mithril nodes and probably something relatively the same with ghost mushrooms as well. So the more you can farm, the better, and it's just going to up your gold per hour. And the reason why I stay right here is because if you get into a little bit of trouble and you need to line of sight him, you can just sidestep to the right. You're also out of the way of the pats that come through. Don't worry, if you stay off to the right here, you won't actually aggro them. So start off with the Starfire, get double dots on him. And a question I actually get often on this boss is, why do I cast Wrath? Well, Wrath is a pretty short cast time, as you guys can see, because I'm spec'd into it. And usually when he's shooting his gun, it just prevents less pushback. When he's casting his flamethrower, it is a few second cast, so that's when ideally you want to cast Starfire. So that's kind of how the rotation goes. Keeping Rejuve on yourself to keep your health going, and it should out heal the damage he puts on you. Use Innervate earlier. I feel like with this gear, I actually kind of needed Innervate. I think with better gear, you can do it without. But obviously, in my current gear set, I kind of need it. So ideally, you want to have Innervate for this and Princess. But basically, rinse, repeat, keep dots on him, and do as much damage as possible. Eventually, you will get him down. If you do get really close to dying, you can sidestep and get a full rank healing touch off, just for mana efficiency purposes. But ideally, you don't want to but you should be fine. If I can do it in this gear, I'm sure you guys can do it in Priebus, of course. Alright, once he's dead, I just go ahead and heal up here, and I go ahead and loot him. Now, he can drop a few different items. The best one, I think, is the sword, which I got right here. I think it sells for like 3 gold or something. Yeah, so it's pretty good drop, just to sell to a vendor. I don't know if DEing it's worth. It might be. I don't have disenchanting on this guy, so I just sell it. Once you kill Gizlock, you're going to make your way back up this area. I use sprint here. It doesn't really matter. Probably the more sprints you use, the better once you get a good feel for your pathing. Avoiding these mobs. There are a couple of mobs here that pat. Just make sure to avoid those guys and not aggro. So right now, we're going to make our way to Princess, avoiding certain mob packs. It's really easy, being level 60, but just be wary. So right here, sometimes the mob can be really close to the edge. I actually have pulled them before. As a druid, you can use Soothe Animal. I just stealth through it. It really doesn't matter. Also, be careful around this corner here. Sometimes a rock elemental with his little buddies or kids, the whole gang. It's possible to aggro those guys as well, so just be careful when you turn that corner. You can go out and around on the right side. I just go through the middle. You can stealth through, but you can just really walk through this. And you shouldn't aggro these guys at all. Okay, so I wanted to wait for Innervate to come back up. We will start the pull here. As you guys can see, I'm still using the same gear. On pull, you wanted to start off with the Starfire and a Moonfire, just to get that long cast off and hopefully get a nice little crit. And then we're actually going to kite her around the rock now. As a disclaimer, guys, this is how I do Princess. I know some people like to run around the whole room. This is just what I've been doing, and this is kind of what I'm comfortable with, even though it probably is a little bit harder than the other strategy. Now, this is what I call dancing around the rock. Now, you basically just kind of make it so you just kite her back and forth. I'm kind of just used to the movement. It looks a lot harder than it actually is. But once you kind of get a feel for her pathing, it becomes significantly easier. Now, keep in mind, I did this really early on. They actually nerfed this method, if that makes sense. So her pathing was a lot wider, and it was a lot less risky. So you could kind of get away with making a few stepping mistakes, and it was a lot easier to kind of grasp the strategy. So they nerfed her by making this method harder, where it almost seems like she kind of like beelines it around the rock a lot closer. And you know, it's just a little bit harder in that regard. A couple of important notes that I want to share with you guys. If you are a male Tauren like myself, I will let you know now that it's going to be a lot harder to do this than you would be either being a female Tauren or a night elf, because your hitbox is so much bigger. She can in fact actually hit you through the rock depending on like where you guys are positioned. So you're a lot more susceptible, and it's a lot riskier than the other races and or genders. So keep that in mind when you're playing this. So I am a male Tauren, and you might actually see me get hit over the rock a few times. So just be very wary. You might have to play a little bit more careful. Maybe have some consumables like a pot, mana pot, or a health pot, just in case you may not have NS. As I mentioned earlier, she is immune to nature damage. So unlike private servers, I know a lot of people get this confused. On private servers, you're able to use Insect Swarm and Moonfire, which does speed up the kill, having 2 dots on her. But unfortunately, in this client, like I mentioned, she is immune to nature damage. So only Moonfire and Starfire can really do damage among, like, you know, pets and things of that nature. But in terms of your own spells, those are the only things. So you got to heavily rely on Moonfire to do most of your damage here. Okay, next we will go ahead and talk about her abilities. Her first ability is called Boulder. It's a short cast time where she basically throws a rock at you and can stun you or knock you down, which is a stun. It allows her to kind of catch up to you. So ideally, you never want to get hit by this. If you have better gear, you can probably soak a couple of hits and run around the rock. But if you're not very geared, it's very important that you just stay LOS. Some spots, it looks like you're lying, but you can still get hit by it. So just be very careful, get a feel for it. But it's a good time to get a quick, you know, rank 2 healing touch off, or just a quick cast. But ideally, you just want to just stay hidden as best as possible. The second move that she has is called Dustfield, aka the fart move. That's kind of what people mostly call it. It's basically where she stands still and there's a bunch of dust that kind of comes out a circle around her. I think the total cast time for her is about like 8 seconds, and it just kind of does like a little bit of damage and it knocks you back. It is possible to get a Starfire cast off or a heal during this time. I do think, though, she can cast Boulder while doing her Dustfield move. I think she can. So just be very careful if you try to get a Starfire cast off to get in line of her. Just if she starts casting Boulder, just hide behind the rock again. The third move is Fear. She can fear you. Obviously, being level 60 and being LOS, you really don't have to worry about this too much, but it is possible if she closes the gap, she can fear you. And yes, I have been feared into those 2 stone giants over there, so just be very careful being too close to her for too long. Lastly, and I would say probably the most important move, is she does have a Wind Fury. Now, it's really weird how it works. So it works a little bit differently than the Shaman Wind Fury. Essentially, the longer she doesn't hit something for, so if she goes a long time without hitting, whether it's a pet or you, it's almost like she's kind of holding, it kind of like stacks up. So it almost stacks up like she has 3 to 4 Wind Furies, and then when she finally connects, it just hits you for a crap ton of damage. So ideally, you don't want to get hit by it, but you know, I have done this fight before without even getting touched, but it is still possible to get hit. So this is where NS or a potion would come in handy. Some helpful tips to make this easier for you guys. Number 1, utilizing pets. Barovs, Ani, Skeleton, Mithril Dragonling, Mechanical Dragonling, all that stuff can be used in one of 2 ways. Option A, you can use it as kind of like an oh shit button to help force your Dustfield to get like a healing touch off, or even a Starfire for some cheeky damage. Or option B, just utilizing it for max damage potential, ideally after she's done using her Dustfield move or her fart, to maximize how much damage you can get before her next one. The next thing is prioritizing your hots, so you can just keep moving. So just keeping rejuve if you take some damage, so you can just keep moving back and forth, or dancing as I like to call it. The next tip is, with better gear, you can speed it up by using things like rank 9 Moonfire. What this will do is it will still do the hard initial damage, especially if you have a lot of crit, to kind of speed up the boss fight, but it costs less mana and it does not override your max rank Moonfire, so you still get that dot ticking. I mentioned this before, but getting Starfire casts off during the Dustfield. And lastly, at 10 or 15%, I forget, she'll start to slow down on her run. And this is where you can safely go into cat form, sprint away to get some distance, and then just run around the whole room and just whittle her down with Moonfire, finish her with some Starfires, max rank. She can still cast Boulder, just range it, and you'll eventually kill her. One brief thing I wanted to mention is, it is possible for her, if she's on the east side of the rock, she can actually get stuck and start evading. This is really unlucky. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And essentially the whole fight just resets. Now, she'll just kind of stare at you. What I do is I run over to the edge of the waterfall where you don't really like fall off. You kind of swim. Eventually, if you stay in the spot long enough, she will reset. You can do this if you get feared into the double giants, if you think you're going to die and just want to sprint over here to reset her. This can kind of work in all those ways. So keep that in mind if this does happen. Like I said, it's quite unfortunate, but it is possible. All right, guys, that is it for this video. I hope it helped you out. If you liked it, make sure to drop a thumbs up, man. It helps me out so much. Of course, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to drop a comment below. I do my best to go through as many as possible. You can also @ me or DM me on Twitter. And of course, I do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Reverie. I stream from anywhere from 4 to 7 days a week, so come on by. I'd love to have you. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.